This is lesson number 9, and you should be listening to this video on September 19th, 2013, or shortly thereafter. You should have finished this hopefully by Sunday the 22nd, so that you can study for your exam on the 24th. Sweating and its regulation by the autonomic nervous system. We haven't gone into too much depth about the integumentary system because of the fact we're going to come back to it when we hit the nervous system. It's going to talk more about pressure points and how you receive messages and all of that, transmitting different pathways. But I do want you to know that the stimulation happens in the anterior hypothalamus, and I know you have not learned the brain yet, but it's still important to note that that will be important to know, the anterior hypothalamus. Okay. Also the preoptic area. We'll know the exact location later on. The nerve impulses from this area that cause sweating are transmitted in the autonomic pathways to the spinal cord and then through sympathetic outflow to the skin everywhere in the body. Sweat glands are then innervated by cholinergic nerve fibers. Basically, they secrete acetylcholine, which is ACH. You're going to hear that again later on. And then they run along those sympathetic nerves to secrete transmission. They're stimulated by some epinephrine, which you hopefully have heard of before, and norepinephrine, which is circulating in the blood. And it's really important to know that during exercise, the hormones are then secreted by the adrenal medullae. Adrenal is talking about the kidneys. And the body needs to lose the excess amount of heat produced by those active muscles. I do realize that this is a lot of information that you have not heard before, and that's why it's not really going to be covered that much on your test. Basically, I want you to know out of this entire slide that sweating is regulated by the autonomic nervous system. Sorry about moving the slide. Sweating is regulated by the autonomic nervous system, and their whole purpose of sweating is temperature regulation. That's the entire purpose. So that's why when you exercise, when you work out, you sweat. And that's to get your body temperature, so your core temperature not to overheat. And this is all just the physiology of it. And if you're going to go into any kind of medical degree, you're going to have to eventually know all of this stuff. But for right now, the important thing for you to know is that sweating is regulated by the autonomic nervous system for temperature control. Okay, this is the mechanism of sweat secretion. The sweat gland is shown to be a tubular structure consisting of two parts, which you have already seen in your diagram. You have that subdermal coiled portion that actually secretes the sweat, and then you're also going to have that duct portion that will pass it outwards through the dermis to the epidermis of the skin and then outwards. And it's going to basically stay on the outside of your skin until it either drips off or evaporates off, and that is how you get your temperature control. The secretory portion of the sweat gland secretes a fluid called the primary secretion or precursor secretion. Again, this is excess information. It probably will not be on your test, but I want you to know that it will secrete a fluid that will flow through the duct, and when that sweat gland is stimulated only slightly, that precursor will then, fluid will then pass through the duct slowly. And this is the important part. The sodium and chloride ions, that's why your sweat is salty, and NaCl, will then be reabsorbed and will reduce the osmotic pressure. We're talking about the water pressure of the sweat glands, allowing water to be reabsorbed. So it prevents dehydration and it reabsorbs the NaCl, and it will also reabsorb water. And the other constituents are then concentrated. You have different components of your sweat that will not be reabsorbed into your skin. Okay, that is all that you needed to know for your exam as far as the rest of the integumentary system went. Now we're going to get a little bit into the careers and technologies, a little bit of diagnostics, and see if you're interested in becoming maybe possibly a dermatologist. Just kind of a little bit of information. It might pop up on your test, but it's going to help you more than anything with your case studies that you might have to do. Homeostatic imbalance of skin. You need to know that skin can develop over 1,000 different ailments, which is insane. because it's your biggest organ. So it's also going to have the most ailments that could possibly happen to it. The most common are going to be allergies, like hives, that kind of stuff, or infections caused by bacteria or virus, possibly fungi. Just depends on the type. You've all heard of like athlete's foot and not all that. Staph infections. So those are your homeostatic imbalances. Here's some really gross pictures of infections and some allergies. That far right picture is an athlete's foot. You also can get boils and carbuncles, cold sores, contact dermatitis, which just means that your skin is inflamed. Remember, itis means swelling. Impetigo, which is shown in the middle picture, and psoriasis, which is shown in the far left. To study more of this for your exam, it's on page 107 in your book. Burns. This is important. This will be on your exam. Skin is the only thing that is only as thin. Sorry. Hello. Thin. Sorry, I'm writing with my finger. Thin as a paper towel. When damaged, almost every body system will then suffer. So that's why people, when they get third-degree burns, they don't actually die from the burn. They die from the infection or from fever or trying to recover from the burn. Metabolism will then accelerate, or it could be impaired. Just depends on the type of burn and the person. Changes in the immune system, like again, you're going to be very, very susceptible to bacteria. And cardiovascular system will then falter if they're overworking their heart too much to try and repair themselves. Burn is a tissue damage or cell death caused by intense heat, electricity, UV radiation like sunburns, or certain chemicals like acids. You've all heard of the safety warnings in chemistry lab to not burn yourself with the chemicals. And here is a great picture showing the differences in the first degree through third degree burns. In the first degree burn, you can see that it's just kind of red and kind of irritated. The second degree has a little bit of bubbles, and the third degree is all the way down and damaging the entire tissue, as you can see into that picture. It's pretty intense. Degrees of burn, again, you are going to have to know the difference between first, second, and third degree burns. It will be on your test, and it will probably be on an online homework assignment. Hint, hint. I want you to read through this right here. It says, burns are divided into 3 categories, depending on the depth of the damage to the skin. First degree burns affect the epidermis, and skin may peel. Okay, so it's like a normal sunburn. Second degree burns cause formation of blisters and bubbles. Third degree burns destroy the whole of the skin's thickness and require special treatment. So that's when you actually have to go to the hospital and get special treatment for your burns. There's something called the rule of 9s. You are going to have to know this as well. Divides the body into 11 areas. And you can see, right, obviously in this area is not 11 areas, but that's because the chest is going to be divided into 2. The legs are divided into 2, and it will all add up to 11. Each accounting for 9% of the total body surface area, plus the additional area surrounding the genitals represents 1%. So later on, the infection is then greater threat and the leading cause of death of burn victims. I already told you that. Infection is the worst type, and how most people will then die. Typically, the immune system gets depressed 2 days after a severe burn injury. So you're not going to get sick right away, but a few days right after is when you're most susceptible to get infection. If you look at the baby versus the adult, since their heads are so much larger, it counts for 2 of their 9%. Their chest is 2, and their legs actually got broken up into even smaller pieces because they're tiny. So it does vary from adult to baby. Skin cancer, y'all have all heard of this and all heard of the threat. Numerous types of tumors can arise on the skin. Most skin cancers are going to be unknown, the causes, but it's always assumed that it's probably going to be overexposure to UV radiation or sunlight. There is basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, and malignant melanoma. We may cover these in disease days. If not, it's on these pages in your books, 109 through 111. It could pop up on your exam. I'm not saying yes or no to that one. This is the ABCD rule of thumb for figuring out if your mole or freckle is possible melanoma. First thing you're going to look for is asymmetry, which means that the two sides of the pigmented spot or mole do not match. So if you look in our graph over here, it's a really great graph. I'll post a better picture of this on Edmodo so you can see it better. But you can see how the two sides of that melanoma does not match the other side like the normal mole. The B stands for border irregularity, which means that part of the border or edges are kind of ragged. They are not smooth and they kind of exhibit some little indentions. The third thing is color. If all the color is the same, you're probably okay. But if the color kind of varies from blacks, browns, tans, reds, blues, and like the second one, it kind of varies, that is another sign of melanoma. And the fourth one, which you can't see on my text, but you can see on the chart, is diameter. If the mole's diameter is larger than a pencil's eraser, that is a major sign of melanoma because it's starting to take over your skin. Again, pencil erasers aren't very big, so if you have anything bigger than that, you want to go get it checked out by your dermatologist. Okay, now we're into the careers. This is going to go a little bit quick. I'm just going to list them off and tell you which ones kind of make the most money. The careers in skin care, you have all heard of dermatologists. Those are the ones that will probably make the most money out of the ones listed, with the exception of plastic surgeons. This is going to be kind of recovery plastic surgeons for severe burn patients and any kind of birth defects, possibly, depending on what type of skin. Some people are born without skin, and so they need to have skin grafts right away. You'll also come into contact with some skincare if you're a registered nurse. They pretty much will come up on every single one of our careers and technology days. The aesthetic and dermatology nursing will also obviously have to deal with skincare. They're going to be around the same pay, the registered nurse and the aesthetic dermatology nursing, just depending on the type of certification that you get when you're finished with your nursing degree. And then the last one is a medical esthetician, and they're going to be basically like a medical beautician, where they will help you figure out how to cover up your skin problems. They won't necessarily completely fix them and give you prescriptions, but they'll tell you how to like apply makeup, for instance. So kind of interesting job right there. This is always my goofy page. On page 112 in your book, you see kind of a girl with all of her systems shown, and it will tell you exactly how each system is related and how they're all in sync with each other. And I do want you to be able to tell me, and you will have a quiz over this, not a quiz, it'll be on your final, on how to tell me how the other body systems are intertwined. And I believe that is it for these notes. Hopefully you took a lot of notes on your own. We will have a class discussion to make sure that you don't have any questions over your notes. If you do, just watch the video again and go through it with your book, because I followed it pretty directly except for the sweating part. The sweating is not in your book. You'll have to use internet resources, or you can come to me during tutorials on Mondays through Wednesdays. And again, your test is going to be on Tuesday, September 24th. All right, thanks guys. Bye.